terror tape. On the eve of the election, Osama bin Laden's new message for America about the 9/11 attacks and George W. Bush. Down to the wire. Just 4 days to go. Both candidates trying to close the deal for votes. Which are the battleground states now? Explosive mystery. A new videotape from Iraq shows American soldiers and a huge supply of explosives that are now missing. What the Pentagon is saying about this mystery again tonight. And an NBC News exclusive. The woman who blew the whistle on Halliburton speaks out about why she went public about no-bid, big-money contracts.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, reporting tonight from NBC News election headquarters on Democracy Plaza.
Good evening. Tonight, Osama bin Laden has a message for America just 4 days before this country votes in a presidential election that has been fought bitterly over the issue of terrorism, the war in Iraq, and yes, the best way to deal with Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the attacks of 9/11. Bin Laden's tape was first broadcast on the Arab language channel Al Jazeera, and while it contains no specific new threat, it raises big questions about the political impact in this country, and both campaigns were quick to answer him. We're going to begin with NBC's Pete Williams on the bin Laden tape.
It's the first new video from Osama bin Laden himself in more than 3 years, an extraordinary statement addressed to an American audience with direct references to the two presidential candidates. The Arab TV channel Al Jazeera today broadcast short segments of the 18-minute video. Standing behind a lectern in seemingly good health, with no gun visible, a first for his videos, bin Laden accuses the U.S. of continuing to support corrupt regimes in the Middle East. If that policy doesn't change, he says there may be more 9/11-style attacks. He says, quote, "Your security is not in the hands of Kerry or Bush or Al-Qaeda, it's in your hands." U.S. intelligence officials say there's little doubt it is authentic, and one official says it appears to be recent. The big question tonight, why release a tape apparently timed to come out on the eve of the U.S. election?
I'm not sure he's trying to influence the election as much as he is to let people know that he is still there and someone to be reckoned with.
This new video comes out a week after another tape surfaced, this one in Pakistan, possibly also from Al-Qaeda. It shows an unidentified man, his face covered, speaking fluent English, making vague threats.
Allah willing, the streets of America shall run red with blood, matching drop for drop the blood of America's victims.
A terrorism expert says the voice matches one heard on a tape made 2 years ago about the 9/11 hijackings.
These heroes were not 19 armies from 19 countries, but rather were 19 mujahideen who were true to Allah, so he was true to them.
It's clearly an American or someone that has spent time inside the United States studying English here.
Tonight, officials here at the Department of Homeland Security say because there are no specific threats in either of these two new tapes, there are no plans now to raise the national terror threat level. Pete Williams, NBC News, Washington.
Coming as this did, heading into the final weekend of the election, both campaigns immediately responded to bin Laden's message with strong messages of their own. We'll begin with that part of the story tonight with NBC's David Gregory, who's traveling with the president in Ohio. David?
And Tom, the White House reacted with unusual urgency to the bin Laden tape. The president spoke out about it tonight in Toledo, Ohio.
Let me make this very clear. Americans will not be intimidated or influenced by an enemy of our country. I'm sure Senator Kerry agrees with this. I also want to say to the American people that we're at war with these terrorists, and I am confident that we will prevail.
Aides say the president first learned about the bin Laden tape just as he was beginning his first campaign rally of the day, where he made the 9/11 attacks and the war on terror, those attacks sparked a central theme of his pitch for re-election. In New Hampshire this morning, the president surrounded himself with some of the families whose loved ones were killed in the attacks.
This nation must never forget their pain.
Never mentioning John Kerry by name, the president spoke as if he was aware of the latest threats from bin Laden.
As we fight the terrorists, they will try to frighten us. So long as I am your president, we will not be held captive by fear.
In these final days, Bush advisors say the president will make the war on terror, seen as his biggest political strength, a major theme. But tonight, Bush advisors refused to speculate on the potential impact the latest bin Laden tape would have. All of this as the president is in Columbus, Ohio tonight, trying to bring some major star power to his fight for this battleground. California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger by the president's side tonight. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC's David Gregory tonight. Senator Kerry, for his part, spent the day in Florida. NBC's Carl Quintanilla is traveling with him tonight. Carl, what's the latest there?
Well, Tom, John Kerry was briefed about the bin Laden tape en route to this event here in Miami. His challenge now is how best to respond to a development that threatens to throw his closing strategy off track.
One quick statement.
After campaigning in West Palm Beach today, Kerry had this to say about the bin Laden tape.
In response to this tape of Osama bin Laden, let me just make it clear, crystal clear. As Americans, we are absolutely united in our determination to hunt down and destroy Osama bin Laden and the terrorists. They are barbarians. And I will stop at absolutely nothing to hunt down, capture, or kill the terrorists wherever they are, whatever it takes, period.
Democrats now fear the tape all but erases the momentum Kerry had built over the missing weapons controversy. Headlines negative for Mr. Bush that he'd leveraged for several days. And it comes as Kerry, campaigning in southern Florida, had hoped to transition to a broader closing message. Kerry is scheduled to return to Florida this weekend, but aides say his campaign trail will likely end in the upper Midwest.
Thank you.
One reason today's appearance may set the tone in Florida for the remainder of the race. Tonight, a senior aide to Kerry says, quote, "It's important for us to move on and run this campaign as we would." Tom.
Thanks very much, NBC's Carl Quintanilla tonight in Miami with Senator Kerry. What effect could this latest bin Laden tape have on the presidential election? Joining me now is NBC's Washington Bureau Chief, moderator of Meet the Press, Tim Russert. Tim, this is an explosive issue, but at this point, we can't say for sure just what impact it may have on either campaign.
Absolutely, Tom. Both campaigns had the exact response and off the record in conversations. They say it's the equivalent of a jump ball. Does this remind people of the war on terror, which would help President Bush? Or does it remind people that Osama bin Laden is still on the loose, which would help John Kerry? There's one threat for both campaigns. Don't try to exploit this issue or overplay it. It can backfire. Clearly, John Kerry would prefer to have a debate about the economy, health care in Iraq the final days. To have it on the war or terror is more comfortable ground for George W. Bush.
Tim, as we're sitting here, let's put up the map now because it is shifting in its shades, it appears, talking to pollsters on both sides, Republican and Democrat, those in between. We want to show you the map now. The battleground states remain the same: Nevada and New Mexico in the Southwest, the upper Midwest, the industrial states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire and New England, and of course Florida is still down there. What's going on, first of all, in the industrial Midwest, Pennsylvania and Ohio?
Tom, Ohio is dead even, although the Bush people are preparing for the possibility that John Kerry could win Ohio. They think they can compensate for that by winning Wisconsin or Iowa, maybe Minnesota, and they now think Michigan's in play. John Kerry is going back to Michigan on his schedule on Monday. Television advertising is increasing. So Michigan, which was once considered safe Kerry country, may be up for grabs or at least leaning Kerry.
Let's talk about the new factors that we have to consider in this election. We have a mass of new voters and a mass of voters voting early. In Iowa, Tom Vilsack, the Democratic governor, says he believes that they're up 60,000 votes out of the 200,000 that have been cast early and by absentee voters, and that George Bush will not be able to make that up on Election Day. Republicans also believe, however, that they're competitive. We don't know in many instances because this is educated guesswork. It's canvassing and polling.
New territory. Pollsters ask voters, are you going to vote? Have you voted for before? If people say they haven't voted before, there's no place we can trace it. Also, young people using cell phones. It's impossible, Tom, to know what this turnout's going to be. In 2000, it was 104 million. We're hearing now 108, 112. I had someone today who follows elections says this thing could hit 120, maybe higher. All bets are off if that's the case. That's why we see Dick Cheney, the Vice President of the United States, going to Hawaii tonight. Why? Because George Bush knows he may lose the 4 electoral votes in New Hampshire. He can try to steal them from Hawaii. Al Gore's been dispatched to Hawaii for John Kerry. John Kerry's doing satellite to Hawaii. This is all about 4 votes on our westernmost state. This is wild.
6 months ago, a major Republican told me he thought they could win Hawaii, and we all laughed up our sleeve about that.
I remember when I was 10 years old, John Kennedy, 5 o'clock in the morning, won Hawaii, won the presidency.
You were 5 o'clock because you were in Buffalo. It was a lot earlier where we were out on the break. NBC's Tim Russert tonight. Thanks very much. When Nightly News continues in a moment, an NBC News exclusive, the Halliburton whistleblower. She tells her story. Is she trying to influence the election? And later, more on presidential politics tonight, looking for every last vote in the critical battleground state of Pennsylvania.
News with Brian Williams, Saturday.
NBC News in depth tonight, an expanding investigation into the Pentagon contracts with the oil services giant Halliburton. The FBI wants to interview a Pentagon whistleblower who came forward this week. She was there when the Halliburton contracts were awarded, and she says she objected. NBC News senior investigative correspondent Lisa Myers sat down with the whistleblower for this exclusive interview.
This is the woman the FBI wants to question. Bunny.
When we come back, the latest on the missing explosives in Iraq and a snapshot of a critical battleground state, Pennsylvania.
2004, the final stretch. Former Senator Bob Kerry and former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani weigh in from Democracy Plaza, only on Meet the Press.
Brian Williams with a kid's eye view of politics.
Iraq tonight, new evidence that could help solve the mystery of the missing tons of explosives, a mystery that's been an issue all week on the campaign trail. The central questions are, were the explosives removed before or after Americans took charge in Iraq? Why weren't they secured? And where are those explosives now? NBC's Pentagon correspondent Jim Miklashevsky with new pictures that could provide some answers or raise new questions.
That some of the missing but each attempt raises more questions than answers. Jim Miklashevsky, NBC News, the Pentagon.
And we have news on the economy tonight. The last look at the GDP before the election, which measures overall economic growth. The economy grew at a 3.7% annual rate in the third quarter. That's slightly better than in the spring, but it's not as strong as analysts had expected. And Wall Street investors took the GDP figure in stride today. The Dow Jones ended the day up just under 23 points there on the large screen. And NASDAQ, as you can see, closed down today just under a point. I'll be right back with a battleground state, Pennsylvania.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Brought to you in part by Aflac. Ask about it at work.
2004, in 4 days. The most powerful team in news brings you complete Election Day coverage live from Democracy Plaza. Decision 2004 on NBC.
You heard in my discussion with Tim Russert earlier, the battleground states remain just that. And in our series on these critical states tonight, we go to the field commanders for both campaigns in Pennsylvania and what they're trying to capitalize on. Here's NBC's Ann Thompson.
To win the White House, John Kerry and John Edwards must win Pennsylvania. And their man on the ground is Tony Podesta.
You're the one who said we should do this.
A hard-charging, old-school Democratic operative.
Who's doing the introduction?
Who ran Bill Clinton's re-election campaign here. Determined to stop him?
That's a strategic decision.
Guy Shiraki, the field general for President Bush in the Keystone State.
We know it's mathematically impossible for the president to lose when we win here.
There's a gold mine of 21 electoral votes on the campaign trail that winds through the state.
The president's beat us, 2-1 in terms of visits, but, the president has a lot of explaining to do. He doesn't explain much.
This year, political scientist Stephen Medvick says Pennsylvanians are looking for answers.
On what issue does this race cut in Pennsylvania?
Well, I think it's probably jobs and the economy generally.
Traditionally, its big cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, favor Democrats. In the center is a wide swath of culturally conservative Republicans.
It's got such a sort of split personality that it really is fertile ground for both parties.
But the motherlode of votes is here in Philadelphia. Some 40% of the state's total comes from the city and its nearby counties. From his nondescript office, Shiraki directs the Republicans' final push, a race against time and voting issues.
They just filed a lawsuit in federal court up in Scranton.
The man who once worked for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, now courting the crucial Catholic vote.
In the old days, you would identify a community leader or a precinct captain. We've identified church captains.
For Podesta, the concern is the people not committed to either candidate or even voting.
No one who answers their phone or opens their mailbox will forget that there's an election on Tuesday.
A frenetic fight to the finish to make the Keystone State theirs. Ann Thompson, NBC News, Philadelphia.
As nightly news for this Friday, it's going to be a busy final weekend of the campaign. I'll be in Florida over the weekend to interview President Bush. I'll have that for you on Sunday night nightly news, and then on Sunday night Dateline, both the President and Senator Kerry, and we'll have them again on Monday morning from these extensive interviews I've conducted with these two candidates in the final weekend of the campaign. I'm Tom Brokaw. Have a good weekend.
On Election Day, if you're...
Good morning. October surprise? A new tape of Osama bin Laden unexpectedly surfaces just days before the election.